So thank you for joining us today, and thank you to everybody on the line. Just some housekeeping tips. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat window or in the question and answer section. And the participants will be muted for the remainder of the webinar. So if you have any questions, please put it there. Also, the session is being recorded. So if you have any questions, they may appear on the recording as well. So before we get started, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Michelle Farrell. I work with the Green Building Program here at IFC, specifically part of the EDGE Green Building Program. And today we're going to discuss the topic of decarbonization of the built environment. So lots of organizations are making very bold claims about their decarbonization targets. So how will you be able to deliver on yours and avoid greenwashing criticisms? Today, we will discuss some practical steps using IFC's EDGE Green Building Certification System. So when we talk about a net zero pathway, there are really two elements that define that: a reductions pathway and a removals pathway. These pathways should be delivered in parallel, but their priority should always be on the reductions pathway. The removals pathway provides further mitigation when reductions will not be sufficient on their own to meet Paris-aligned climate goals. Mitigation approaches can be grouped into these 5 categories that you see: the ability of each mitigation measure approach, prevent net accumulation of emissions in the atmosphere, mitigate transition risks, and enable decarbonization that is consistent with the 1.5 degrees mitigation pathway, and these vary. As you can see, decarbonization does not just apply to buildings, but to the entire value chain of a business. But while buildings are not the only topic, according to the World Green Building Council, they are currently responsible for 39% of global energy-related carbon emissions, 28% from operational emissions, and the remaining 11% from materials and construction. A reason change must happen fast is because of the fragmented nature of the construction industry, which has left 80% of the opportunities for this mitigation still on the table. All of this really opens up a big opportunity for forward-thinking institutions. But why would institutions be proactive in this way? Because we are seeing the green building trend move fast across the globe. You should care about green buildings because they are poised to change the face of the real estate landscape. This graph shows a growth path of EDGE, a green building standard IFC launched commercially in 2015, and it's been growing exponentially, even through the pandemic. A shocking story is Colombia's transformation. In Colombia, green buildings moved from an exotic less than 1% of the market to a mainstream 20% of the market in less than 4 years. The majority of Colombian mortgage providers now offer green mortgages. Why is green transformation so rapid in an industry known for being conservative? Because the opportunity is just huge. IFC commissioned an analysis of green investment sectors back in 2017, and this figure shows a global picture of those opportunities. And you can obviously see here which sector has the greatest investment potential. You also need to prepare now because regulations, they are coming, both in the real estate sector and the financial sector. This might be building emission taxes or restrictions on renting and selling inefficient buildings, or discrimination regarding non-green assets as green taxonomies are spread through and beyond what EU taxonomy has done already. And the pathway will be challenging to achieve. And really nobody is denying that. This is quite a step for all of us to take. Here you can see in blue the key milestones for the built environment as agreed upon in 2018 with the World Green Building Council and the UN Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction. And what they say is by 2030, all new buildings must achieve zero carbon in operations, and by 2050, all buildings, both new and old, must achieve zero carbon in operations and in construction. The IEA's recent report, Zero by 2050, which is directed at policymakers and covers multiple sectors, has several other milestones, including banning coal and oil boilers by 2025 and ensuring new gas boilers are hydrogen ready and banning any fossil fuel use for new build by 2030. On the path to 2030 and 2050, we must set some targets for building owners and developers on how they can actually decarbonize their portfolio. So we've broken it down into steps. The first step should be to map the entire existing building portfolio in EDGE. This will give building owners clear information on their current GHG emissions and entire portfolio building carbon footprint. They can also then plan for retrofit projects needed for any of their buildings that do not comply with EDGE certification, if that is the system that you're using. And they can prioritize the lowest cost retrofits first. The second step we envision is setting clear certification targets. Building owners should plan to bring their building portfolios to compliance first and make sure their new and existing buildings can comply at least with the EDGE certification system. This means the minimum considered in the second step should be that each building should achieve 20% energy savings, 20% water, and 20% embodied energy materials. And again, this should apply to a company's entire portfolio of new and existing buildings. For the next step in the path to carbon zero, you should plan to transition your entire portfolio to achieve EDGE Advanced certification, which is 40% energy savings as the minimum. This will allow you to qualify for EDGE Zero Carbon certification in the future. You can also plan out your reporting strategy to inform shareholders of your progress, access sustainability-linked bonds, green finance, and provide information to include certification in your overall green strategy. So when we look at the EDGE rating system, it's been growing exponentially, and we are now certifying over $1.5 billion in projects per month. The growth of the certification system reflects the growth of the green building market around the world. Countries such as Colombia have grown to have EDGE as their predominant rating system. The growth has continued despite construction slowing through the pandemic, which has also been a success story for green buildings and for EDGE. Another benefit is EDGE ticks all the boxes for your major green finance standards. So that includes standards like ICMA, GRES, Climate Bonds Initiative, CDP, and also EU Taxonomy. And we are aligned with these standards. So if you are reporting in the future, your results from EDGE will directly go into these systems. And this is an example of that. And we are all about quantification. And that is exactly what the example here, which is EU Taxonomy Wants, and all other standards are really looking for around the world, is some basis of which they can measure by. And this is how we will quantify it. So for people who are not familiar with EDGE, what is EDGE and how does it work? EDGE includes a free software, which is a rigorous but streamlined standard of at least 20% reduction in operational energy, operational water, and energy embodied in materials relative to a local business as usual baseline building. And the certification system is administered through the largest network of green building certifiers in the world and quality controlled by our company, IFC. Once a project is entered into the software, a designer can easily see what it will take to get EDGE certified or go for higher levels of ambition. An EDGE Advanced Asset Rating indicates a step up from the 20% to the 40% energy efficiency and qualifies a building to apply for EDGE Zero Carbon rating once the building is in use. The EDGE software is really the heart of the system, the certification system, and has been a real game changer to attract companies that have never certified projects before. First, the interface is easy to use and easy to figure out the rough financial costs and benefits of certification in minutes. Second, architects can work with the software even before they have a design and choose a set of green design options. This is important because green measures that are incorporated early on may be delivered at low to no cost. Third, as green measures are selected, their cost and payback in lower utility bills is calculated instantaneously. This will give a natural preference to passive measures like shading or insulation, which deliver efficiencies regardless of the skill level of the building manager. Active measures are the next option that can be looked at. And then finally, once all of these options are exhausted, designers do tend to look at the more expensive options, which could be rooftop solar, for example. But the process is going from your passive measures to your active measures and reducing your costs. The certification displays key green finance indicators up front. So this single document will provide proof of compliance as well as fulfill your reporting needs for many of these systems that we deal with. Here you can see an example with the percentage operational savings of energy and water, percentage reduction in embodied energy and materials, the building's gross carbon footprint, and the expected savings in emissions. Now, there are many options when aiming for zero carbon certification with EDGE. And really, this is the path that you should follow along this arrow. The first and most important step is to reduce your building's energy consumption through passive measures, such as reduced window-to-wall ratio, insulation of exterior walls, roof and floor, energy-efficient lighting, and correct orientation. These measures are not only the least costly option when it comes to implementation, but they are also highly effective. Second are the more active measures, such as efficient or improvements to, if you are retrofitting, the heating and cooling systems, lighting controls, efficient boilers, and more. These may be slightly more expensive improvements, but are highly efficient at reducing energy usage. Some equipment may just entail making the correct choices when picking between vendors with no or low incremental costs. Some clients who are not installing certain equipment, such as dishwasher for residential projects, can specify these items are chosen for the building. And some have actually provided funds through a purchase agreement. We'll take all the questions at the end. A purchase agreement or credit account to ensure compliance. Next, a client could choose to source the energy for their building from a renewable resource if that is available. These resources include hydroelectric power plants, offshore and onshore wind production, and more. Finally, carbon credits can be used to offset the remaining emissions. Since carbon credits are available worldwide, this is an option of choice for buildings that may not have access to renewable energy sources. While carbon offsets should definitely not be your first choice, they do offer a great option for those who cannot reduce their consumption further through passive or active measures. So now we will look at some examples of projects. The first one is ProCredit Bank, which is their Bulgaria head office. And they were able to achieve through certification the EDGE zero carbon level. They use things such as LED lighting, insulation, energy efficient cooling, and also solar photovoltaic plant was installed in the office to achieve 50% on-site energy savings. For the offsetting of the remaining energy use, they sourced their power through biogas production from a local wastewater treatment plant. So this was a very creative use of local resources to provide that additional offset. Next, we have an architecture office that is a great example in Mexico. Solar panels were also used on this project, and they met our lighting and other electrical needs. They also thought a lot about the comfort in this project. So there were installation of ceiling fans. The remaining CO2 emissions were offset. So they used carbon offsets in this case, but they also paid special attention to other more passive elements, such as preservation of vegetation on the site and installation and reusing the walls and floor slab of the existing building. Now, Scallion Laboratories is also a great example. So they took many passive measures to reduce their energy savings down to 50%. So things like energy saving light bulbs, light sensors, solar photovoltaics, energy meters, all of this was included as part of the project. And for the remainder, they had a local solar installation that offset the remainder of the energy use. So you can see with all of these projects, we really range from what is available in the country, what is available on site, or using offsets from a company. And all of these will help you on your path to getting to zero carbon. And this is not just a dream. Many companies have committed to doing this in many different types of markets, both developed markets and also emerging markets. And you can also be part of the Zero Carbon Pledge Wall, which we have created, and many of our companies who use the EDGE certification system have signed on to this, including financial institutions as well as developers. So if you want to map and track your building portfolio decarbonization path and make those commitments for your building and be part of our EDGE Zero Carbon Wall, please feel free to join us and email us at the email below, edge@ifc.org. Now let's talk about getting to zero carbon with EDGE and what one of these models looks like. So let me just pull it up here. So you can see here, we have a retail building that we have worked on. And I'll just go to the design tab quickly first. All the information has been entered about this building, including information on the retail shopping mall in Aruba. All of the information about the building was entered below. So custom information was entered. There were even more hours of operation. So this was a 24-hour operation mall that we were working with. Also, the area and loads breakdown was defined in detail so that we would get a very accurate answer on how we achieve zero carbon. We also have all the information about the building dimensions, and this is very important as well for the loads upon the building. So how much of the facade was exposed to different orientations in the design? What did they use for the building HVAC system? And also the fuel usage was defined as part of the project so that we could get accurate carbon emissions data. In the materials tab, as I click over to this, you can see that because this was a retrofit project, we were able to reuse a lot of the existing materials that were on the site already. So things like the bottom floor construction, the intermediate floor construction, all of that was existing materials and could be used and reused to achieve the 74% embodied energy and materials reduction. So you can see the different options that were chosen here. We reuse the existing roof instead of demolishing it, and all the different solutions that were chosen. As we only need to achieve in water and materials 20% reduction for zero carbon, but we must achieve 100% reduction when it comes to energy. And we'll look at how this was achieved here. So on the left, you can see the base case and what was used. And then you see the existing building, which shows there is no, just minimize this, yes. There is no energy use for the remainder of this current building. So we can go down to the net zero carbon emissions here, and you can see how this was offset. Solutions that were used in this project that improved it over the base case were things like reduced window to wall ratio, a reflective roof with a solar reflective index of about 85, things like external shading devices, insulation of the roof, efficiency of the glass, and also cooling system efficiency as well was defined. The HVAC system was also optimized in this project with economiers and variable speed drives. We also had better lighting that was included, and options finally to show the on-site renewable energy that was used is defined here. So you can see that with the remaining annual electrical usage, we were able to offset 100% of that, and that automatically defines it here. So you can see that 100% of the EDGE energy standard was actually met. And it's still saying it's EDGE advanced because this has to be defined as edge zero carbon after it's been in operation. So when you come into this tab, the operations tab, once your building is completed and you have achieved edge advanced, then that's when you're going to go in and define your operational data and define exactly how much energy you have used over the years and have you actually offset all of that. So we're looking at what's happening in use, just not what's happening with your model. And you'll be able to add all your electrical sources here and all of your renewable sources as well as defining your carbon offsets. So this project was able to achieve the 100% reduction, both in the consumption after construction, as well as defining it in the model initially. So thank you so much. And I'm going to pass it over to Alessandra to continue the presentation.
Thank you very much, Michelle. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. And for some reason, I'm not able to, Michelle. Let's see.
Try to make you the host, let's say. Does it allow you to share the screen now? You have the green button.
So I have the green button. Oh, perfect. Okay.
Great.
Let me see. Okay, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for having me today. And so I'm Alessandra Surjon, and I'm a senior analyst at Climate Seed. And just to give you a brief, Climate Seed is a social-driven business that aims to bring transparency to the voluntary carbon market. So we know that buildings have a significant impact on global greenhouse gas emissions. As Michelle was mentioning, we're looking that buildings account for about 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions. But so where exactly are these emissions coming from? So there are two main sources of emissions in buildings. So on one hand, we have the direct emissions, so which are the emissions from fossil fuel combustions, basically from on-site equipment, gas for heating and cooking, as well as leakages from cooling. And then on the other hand, we have the indirect emissions. So these are the emissions coming from the building's energy, electricity. So these are pretty significant. It's about 78% of total building energy consumption. And so after all of the reduction efforts you put in place with EDGE, and as what we saw, what Michelle was showing to us, you'll have some residual emissions, right, for both direct and indirect emissions, specifically for the energy use of the building. So for these emissions, there's two options, two things that you can do. So one is to purchase RECs, renewable energy certificates, or to purchase carbon credits. So just to specify for the energy emissions, you can do either one or the other. For the direct emissions, it's only carbon credits. So just to give you a brief and the differences of both. So what exactly are renewable energy certificates? So known as RECs. So these are tradable certificates generated from renewable energy. So these are such as solar, wind, geothermal, biomass, and hydropower projects. And these specifically are measured. So one REC is equivalent to 1 megawatt hour of electricity generated from one of these projects. And these can be purchased to account for electricity emissions. So basically what it means is you're greening your electricity mix. These can help you reduce these electricity emissions. As you can see here from the map that I have, so I'm referring to them as renewable energy certificates, but they actually have different names depending on where you are in the world. So they're known as guarantees of origins, renewable energy certificates, or international renewable energy certificates. So just so you're aware that they go by different names depending on the location. Related to their pricing, so the pricing really depends on your location, the energy source, and the date of production. So just for you to know, these tend to be very volatile. We're dealing with commodities. In the past, they were around, I would say, $1 per megawatt hour. Today, they've increased substantially, specifically in the US. So we're more around the $7 per megawatt hour. So the pricing very much depends on the location in which you are. So different from RECs, we have voluntary carbon credits. And these specifically are generated from projects that either capture or avoid CO2 emissions. So just to specify a bit, so 1 carbon credit represents 1 ton of CO2 either captured or avoided by a project. Something that's very different from the RECs is that these types of projects not only have that carbon aspect, but they also have additional social and environmental impacts. And specifically, these types of projects have co-benefits that are directly linked with the different sustainable development goals. So very important for these types of projects, the impact on the local communities, etc. So as mentioned, these carbon credits can be used to compensate for these residual emissions. So the emissions that you haven't been able to reduce with the EDGE program. And the price of these carbon credits also varies substantially. There's no one fixed price per carbon credit. And it really also, it depends on the project typology, the project location, the size of the project, the co-benefits of the project, and as well, recently also the demand. So after the pandemic, there's been a really increased demand for carbon credits, which has driven upwards the prices. So right now we're looking at around, I mean, for a high quality project, around $8 to $15 per ton of CO2. And as mentioned, it really depends on the types of projects. Just to give you some examples, so the different types of projects that we're looking at are, for example, forestry and land use. So this is everything from forest conservation, afforestation, reforestation, mangrove restoration, etc. We're looking at renewable energy projects as well, community-based projects, so everything related to household devices, such as cook stoves. We have agriculture, waste management, water management projects. So these are just a few examples of the projects. And just kind of quickly to summarize, so the differences between carbon offsets, carbon credits, and renewable energy certificates is, as I mentioned, so the unit of measure. So for carbon credits, carbon offsets, we're talking about tons of CO2 equivalent, which takes into account, of course, carbon, but we're also looking at other types of greenhouse gas emissions. And for RECs specifically, we're looking at unit of measure of megawatt hour. The sources, so the project typology, as I mentioned, so for carbon offsets, we have all different types of projects that either capture or avoid CO2 emissions and are generating carbon credits. And for RECs, we're specifically looking at renewable electricity sources. And then the accounting guidelines, right? So for carbon credits, you can use them to offset any type of residual emissions, so direct and indirect emissions. And for renewable energy certificates, we're focusing on specifically electricity emissions. So that's very important, just because they're used a bit differently. And as I mentioned as well, I mean, the pricing varies. Both of them, I can say, have increased substantially in prices over the last few months, but their pricing varies as well as by the location. So maybe just to give you a bit of background on who we are, who is Climate Seed. So we're one of the recognized partners of EDGE for carbon credits. So specifically, we are only working with sourcing high quality projects that generate carbon credits. We don't work specifically with RECs. And Climate Seed, the reason why we were launched was to bring transparency to the voluntary carbon market and to source high quality projects for our clients. So we were launched in 2018 as a first social business of BNP Paribas, which is one of the largest banks in Europe. And we have recently been acquired by an impact fund of AXA investment managers. And for us, what's really crucial is these 3 points. So we're talking about ethics, transparency, and credibility, especially in this kind of market. So specifically, we're a social driven company, and something important is that today we're part of the 1% for the Planet initiative. So this means that we give 1% of our annual revenues to environmental causes. Second, this point of transparency. So we were launched really to bring transparency to the voluntary carbon market by maximizing the contribution and impacts to the projects. So we have a very transparent business model. And then finally, credibility. So we were launched by BNP Paribas. Today we're supported by AXA, by an impact fund of AXA IM. And for us, we really meet the most rigorous quality standards, and this is trickled down to the projects that we have today on our portfolio, on our platform. So just to tell you a bit of how we actually select the projects that we have on our portfolio. So first of all of the projects have to be certified by either an international or a national standard. So we're talking about standards. The most known in the market are VCS, Vera, and Gold Standard, but there's other standards such as Climate Action Reserve in the US, Plan Vivo, etc. And so these standards have a rigorous project criteria for the projects to be able to generate carbon credits. So for us, all of the projects on the market, on our platform, are issuing carbon credits, tradable carbon credits. Secondly, we do a pretty heavy due diligence on all project developers. So we're making sure everything from anti-money laundering, anti-terrorism, reputational analysis, and basically making sure that the funds are going to the projects and the projects are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then thirdly, we have a sustainability committee that's composed of market experts, and they are reviewing all of the project documentation and making sure that all of the project claims are correct. And it's once we get their validation that we add the project onto our platform, onto our portfolio of projects. So just kind of to tell you, so today we have a platform, a portfolio of more than 30 projects. It's projects all over the world, and we're working with more than 20 project developers in 20 countries. And as I was mentioning, we have different types of projects, right? These different project typologies that are issuing carbon credits. And so maybe just to show you quickly, and I'll actually share with you a bit of our platform. But the way it works is that first, to onboard our platform, to get access to our platform, we ask you to fill out a quick questionnaire and to sign our terms and conditions, and then you get access to our platform. Onto our platform, you can actually browse and select and compare all different projects that we offer, and see the different SDGs that they target, discover a bit about the project story, the project KPIs, etc. And directly on our platform, you can actually go in and purchase the carbon credits. And then once the transaction is finalized, so what we do as Climate Seed is that we actually have accounts on the different market registries. So the project developer transfers the carbon credits to us, to Climate Seed, to our account. And what we'll do is that we'll actually retire these credits. So it means basically, let's say, canceling them on the registry, and on behalf of our clients. And once we do that, we're able to issue you carbon offsetting certificate, as you can see here, a climate contribution certificate. And this is basically for you as a proof that the offset has really happened. And so this is your proof when you go back to EDGE to show that you've actually offset the residual emissions that you have to be able to be zero carbon building. So so this is an example of the certificate that will issue you. And then maybe I just wanted to share with you an example of a project, maybe before I go onto the platform and show you the platform. But so for example, this is a peatland conservation project. It's one of the largest projects on the voluntary carbon market. It's really a huge project. It covers over 150,000 hectares of critical peat swamp forest in Indonesia. And so this project is actually avoiding more than 7 million tons of CO2 annually. So it's pretty big. It's one of the largest projects. And what's really important about this project is, so as I mentioned, this carbon aspect, but it's also the co-benefits. So this specific project, I mean, they have a lot of biodiversity co-benefits. Specifically, they're protecting the local mix of flora and fauna, including critical endangered species. And so these co-benefits related to the biodiversity is really important. And as I mentioned, so all of the projects are certified by an international standard. So for example, this project is certified by the VCS standard and has actually a double certification. So it's also CCB certified, so climate community biodiversity. So specifically related to the co-benefits of the project. And as I was mentioning, I mean, the additional co-benefits to the local community, which are really important. But so let me go ahead and actually I'm going to share the, let me see if I can share our platform. So can you see the platform?
No, not yet. I think you may have just shared instead of the screen, you shared your presentation. So maybe try to stop sharing and reshare again.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, perfect. So
yes, that's great. We can see it.
Great. So this is what our platform looks like. So right now I'm actually sharing a demo version of our platform. So the projects that you see here are just random examples of projects. They're not the real projects. And so basically once you get access to our platform, you can actually browse the different projects that we have by project typology. So specifically, if you're looking for a specific type of project, you can also browse by location. So maybe you want to have an impact where specifically where the building is or close to where the building is. Just to mention, most of the projects are in developing countries. However, we're seeing an increased amount of projects in also developed countries. So it really depends on the specific country if there's projects that exist or not on the voluntary carbon market. But more and more, we're seeing an increase of number of projects really all over the world. So you can select here the project location, and then specifically you can also look at maybe specific sustainable development goals that you want to target. So if for your organization gender equality is an important SDG that you're looking to target, you can actually as well align it with a project that you select, right? So a project that maybe empowers women, employs women, and supports local women in the community. That's an example. I mean, there's also biodiversity is a huge one. If you're looking to have a high biodiversity impact, if you're looking to generate economic growth, I mean, it really depends on the different sustainable development goals that you're looking to target. And so basically here you have examples of the types of projects that we have on the platform. So for example, the project that I was mentioning, these peatland conservation project in Indonesia. So for example, this is the project page. Here you would have the project developer, so who's actually implementing, carrying out the project, the number of tons available for the project, the type of project. So this is emission avoidance project related to forestry and land use. Then you have the certification, and then usually for most projects you'll have a quick video on the project, the project story, the project location, as well as all of the pictures related to the project. This is important for communication purposes, so that you can actually share the project that you're supporting and share a bit of that media as well, and the different KPIs. And specifically, as I was mentioning, so different projects have different targeted sustainability development goals. So for example, this project is really focusing on no poverty and working with the local communities to improve their livelihoods, as well as the biodiversity impacts of the project. And then basically you have a timeline on the project, when the project started, when it started issuing carbon credits, when it was verified, etc. And then as well the local partners, what the contribution of the sale of the carbon credits contributes to. And then you have the different prices. So some of the project developers have chosen to set, let's say, more attractive pricing depending on volume. So the more tons of CO2 you purchase, the lower the price per ton of CO2. And just something to note is that, so the price per ton of CO2, as I had mentioned, it's set by the project developer. And to that, we add a 15% margin that's strictly paid by the contributor. So it means that the project is getting 100% of the money they need to support their project. And then on the bottom, you have all of the documentation that they have submitted to the standard for review, certification of the project. So you have access to all of that documentation as well. And then it's fairly easy. You would just go here, you put the number of tons that you're looking to purchase. So for example, 300 tons, you update your cart. and then it takes you to that final phase of the purchase. So, and once, as I was saying, once the purchase is completed, then what we do is that we receive the carbon credits. We pay, of course, the project developer. We receive the carbon credits on our registry, and we're retiring those carbon credits on your behalf, and we're issuing you that certificate that then is proof that you can use, for example, proof with EDGE to confirm that you have really offset those residual emissions that you have. So this is just a brief look of our platform. Of course, we have different, as I was mentioning, different types of projects, really in different locations. And for us, what's important is really the quality of the project. We have projects that have really high social environmental benefits. So different from renewable energy certificates, it's actually projects that not only look at that carbon aspect, but look at also all of the co-benefits related to the Sustainable Development Goals, which is really important and can be significant for a company's communication. So this is all on my side. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on the chat, and please feel free to check out our website, climateseed.com, and feel free to reach out to us in case you have any questions, and we would be happy to work with you to find new projects that can meet what you're looking for and help you get to carbon zero building. So thank you very much, and thank you very much, Michelle.
Thank you so much for this. And we have a bunch of questions, so I'll just finish up my presentation and then we can go into this after. So Climate Seed is one of our partners, but we certainly support carbon credits or different types of renewable energy from all different types of sources. So this is just an example for people. One of the questions that we have a lot, and I think maybe we should address it right now, is people are asking for local carbon credit providers. So, and I think this maybe is one of the areas of confusion. Can you provide carbon credits all over the world?
Yeah, definitely. So carbon credits, we're talking about the voluntary carbon market, which is an international market. The projects are located all over the world, and they're issuing these carbon credits that can be tradable. So usually, I mean, in most countries, there's projects that are generating carbon credits, specifically for developing countries. For developed countries, it depends. It really depends. For example, here in France, recently there's been a national label, so Label Bas Carbone, and so now we have actually projects generating credits in France, but that's fairly new. And there's other countries that are as well starting with those with projects that are generating carbon credits. So I mean, it really depends on the country, but something important is that any organization can support any project anywhere in the world and can use those carbon credits as offsets. So even if it's not located specifically in your country, you can use those carbon credits. A bit different than to renewable energy certificates, because renewable energy certificates, you need to have that option in your country to be able to use those. So that's why it's maybe, let's say, a bit more flexible, carbon credits, but it's just, as you said, another option to renewable energy certificates.
Great, thank you so much. And let me just share my screen again for the end of the presentation. And I know some people have asked about banks. And one of the areas that we're particularly good in is aligning with financial intermediaries. And we are a certification system developed by a bank for banks initially. And this was something that was done to initially be able to assess real estate for ourselves as well. And all of these different banks that you see here, and different banks all over the world, this is not a comprehensive list, do offer incentives for EDGE certification or have been a partner in something like the issuance of a green bond. So there is a lot of room and different things like complying with the criteria for a green bond or complying for a green mortgage. This is definitely something that's taken into account when a lot of people do EDGE certification. So definitely consider this as you're going through this. Also, one of the calls to action I definitely want to take here is getting to EDGE zero carbon is going to require you to at least achieve EDGE advanced. So if you are along the process and you're designing your building and you're very close to EDGE advanced, you don't think you're going to go zero carbon yet, give yourself that opportunity by making your project at least EDGE advanced as a minimum, because you always have the option in the future to go to EDGE zero carbon. Also, another question that was asked is, do we have the option with EDGE, the regular EDGE rating system, to go to zero carbon? And the answer is no. You have to at least achieve that 40% in energy savings, and then you are going to be able to qualify for EDGE zero carbon. And I also want to say thank you so much to Climate Seed, and also thank you to our partners, the United Kingdom and the European Union, as well as the Swiss government, for the support that they have given to the program. So thank you so much for attending today. I'm going to close out the recording and then we can answer all the questions. Right, so we will go through some of the questions here. So does Climate Seed offer compliance with other rating systems as well? I assume the answer would be yes in that case. So if you're working with LEED or another system, would you be able to use the carbon credits from Climate Seed?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, Climate Seed, we have credits that are certified by international standards. So they're carbon credits that can be used to offset any type of residual emissions, and they're recognized by different organizations you were mentioning before, for example, CDP, so as well with CDP, etc.
Okay, great.